Welcome to Elevate Your Event, your favorite podcast for transforming fundraising events. Join us weekly for expert tips and creative ideas to make your next event a standout success.
Today, we're joined by Matt Stockman, founder of the Nonprofit Launch Plan. If you're starting a nonprofit or looking to tighten up your strategy, this episode is packed with 6 smart steps to help you grow with clarity and confidence. Let's jump in.
Okay, welcome back to the Elevate Your Event podcast. We talk about all the various ways you can make your next fundraising event better. Maybe raise more money at the same time. Yeah. But better doesn't always have to be more money. It just needs to be better. Anyway, we got a special guest in the studio today. We've got Matt Stockman from the Nonprofit Launch Plan.
Thanks for inviting. Thanks for having me. It's great to be able to spend this time together, and you're sharing the table with me, which is a privilege.
Yeah. Yeah, and I honestly, we don't get a lot of guests in the studio, so
really?
We are absolutely honored to have you. You know, so many people are like all over the world or the country, and so the fact that you are local here in Denver, welcome to Colorado.
Thank you.
I think you've kind of migrated Chicago via New Jersey to here.
Yeah, I've lived, I think the list is shorter of places I haven't lived. Nice. Yeah, we've been here in Denver for a little over a year. Love it. Fantastic. It's a beautiful part of the world. That's for sure.
I love it. Yes, I was born here, and then because I didn't have any decision making ability when I was 2 when we moved.
Most of us don't.
My dad didn't give me a vote. We moved, but I moved back here after college, and I've lived here ever since. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's a great place. And we have the lovely and fabulous Inga in here with us.
Hi, I'm Inga Weiss.
And Jeff Porter, CEO, founder of Handbid. And we are here to talk about nonprofits and events and fundraising and kind of, well, let's go back. The launch plan.
Yeah.
Walk us through the launch plan, Matt.
So this all got started, basically. I have a long background working in a lot of different nonprofit organizations, a lot of media companies, some really large ones, some very, very small ones. And what I started to kind of notice a long time ago was ultimately, and you guys probably have seen this as well, as you've worked with hundreds of nonprofits who are all putting events together, is that most people get into nonprofit work based on the cause that's driving it in some way or another. They get passionate about an idea and wanting to impact the world, and they say, let's go for it. We're doing this. And then all of a sudden they look around and go, oh, I didn't realize that there was more to it than just showing up on a Saturday morning and handing out food or doing whatever. There's all of these other elements to making it successful that are equally, if not more important at the beginning of the journey, when really deep down people, all they really want to do is just whatever that thing that they feel like they're called to, and they're driven towards. And so in sort of having the same conversation over and over and over and over and over again with a bunch of different people, the same themes sort of emerge from everyone, and everybody's talking about they're facing the same challenges. And when you have the opportunity to kind of look at the whole process a little bit more from a third-party kind of outsider looking in viewpoint, you see all the things that the person who's driven by the cause doesn't necessarily see. And it's really and it's oftentimes just different shades of the same colors over and over again. The same challenges with clarity and messaging, same challenges with once I've called all my family and friends, to get their financial support, what do I do now? How do I divide my time between doing the work that I really want to do and all the other things that I realize have to get done? All those things, basically, and ultimately, 6 big sort of buckets kind of rose to the surface of areas where people need help, need coaching, need assistance, need some frameworks and some plans and some protocols in place in order to be able to sort of eventually get to the point where they can focus on the work that they feel like they're called to. And that's where the 6 steps of the plan really come together, or 6 areas really that people really kind of need to focus and concentrate on, and oftentimes just don't have the experience, don't have the knowledge or the background in order to be able to.
So what are these 6 steps or 6 areas maybe?
Yeah, so the 6 areas are, the first one is, well, they don't necessarily go in any particular order. This development is one of them. That's fundraising, of course. Leadership is another one, which is, putting a board together. How do you manage your own time? How do you work with an advisory team? Policies and protocols. Also, right in line with that is operations, finances, marketing, and then last, and of course, the most important is ultimately the programs and services, the work that you feel like you're called to. But there's a lot of components and pieces to each one of those things. But those are pretty much the 6 buckets that. Everybody has got to have some sort of a plan in all 6 of those areas in order for you to have the best opportunity for success.
No, that makes sense. And you probably bounce between them too, as you're kind of getting things going.
Yes.
I mean, I remember we started our first nonprofit back in 2004. At the very beginning, it's like, well, I guess I have to fill out paperwork.
Yeah.
Right? I got to go formulate or form a corporation in the state of Colorado, and then I got to turn around and I got to fill out an IRS Form 1023, and how the heck do you do that? And there's some people that help you with that kind of stuff, but I mean, you're really in kind of like, in your case there, that quasi-leadership, quasi-operations mode.
Yeah.
Right? But you got to jump into fundraising pretty quick or you have no money.
Right, exactly. And I think a lot of the resources that are available for people today definitely sort of focus on those initial things, which are like super important in order to file the paperwork right and get the 501c3 approved and sort of get everything legally in order. That's an important first step. But then after that, well, then what do I do?
Right.
And that's where I like to say that we have the opportunity to kind of step in and hopefully be of benefit to people.
Well, great. So do you like to start with them prior to them getting all that in place, or are you typically running into your clients after they've got the IRS designation done?
Typically, it's the latter, after they have the IRS designation done. That's actually, of all of the 6 pieces of the framework, that's the one I'm the least sort of experienced in. So I'm definitely going to hand that off to some people who I know do that really well, and make some recommendations in that space. Okay. And for the most part, most of the people that I work with have already walked through that. Yeah. But they're kind of literally sitting at their desk going, well, now what?
Right.
And that's where I can step in and go, well, let's talk about the clarity around your messaging. What is it that and it even comes back to helping a lot of organizations with something as simple and what feels kind of elementary as a mission statement a lot of times, of just let us help you articulate your mission in a way that other people can understand. The rest of your team or your volunteers can understand. Right. And I can't tell you the number of CEOs sometimes of larger organizations that I've talked with and said, hey, tell me why you exist. And you get a lot of words that don't really make a whole lot of sense. Right. And for a lot of us, we think, well, that's sort of square one for a lot of people, but that's one of the things that I think is often overlooked and super, super important, because it funds and it fuels and guides everything else.
Yeah, well, you think about mission, it's called a mission statement, right? Not a mission speech.
Right.
But I mean, a lot of times when people start to describe why they do something, they start with the story, and there's no problem with that.
Right.
But at some point, you got to boil it down to a statement. What do they call them? The elevator talk, right? The elevator speech. You're going up 3 floors with this person. What does XXX nonprofit do? You got to be able to quickly articulate it.
Well, and I think the benefit of that really is as much for you as it is for the person, the other person on the elevator, because the the goal of that is to get the clarity in your own head. It's not really to be able to make a 30-second pitch that hopefully ends up in a check from the guy in the elevator, although that might happen. But,
that'd be great.
But it really is about how can I boil down all of this passion that I have to the essence of, like, how's this going to make a difference in somebody else's life?
Right. Look, I get it. And it's not set in stone, right? That mission statement can evolve over time because people's purpose or their program services and everything else can evolve over time. And I think sometimes people get so stuck on, I've got to make this perfect. You have to make it accurate, and then it can, change or whatnot.
Yeah, you got to start with something.
Start something.
Right.
So,
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So we started the Prader-Willi Syndrome Association of Colorado, and what was interesting about starting that was it was about as much of what we were not going to do as well as what we were going to do. And I think that was important to us because prior to us starting this, it was a support group. And so, we want to provide those things, but we wanted to say is we want to be more than a support group. We don't just want to, meet at the library on Sundays and talk about the problems that we have. We want to start to address some of those issues too. So I think a lot of times you kind of have to sit down and say, like, what is it, that we think is going to be important? And if you're coming from something that already existed, or there's other organizations that do the same thing, I think sometimes maybe you should talk about how you're different too, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I think really the specificity, if that's even a word, I'll
go with it. Yeah,
specificity.
Mark's looking it up right now.
It is.
The specificness of,
that is not a word,
of what you do. It, again, helps clarify for yourself, helps clarify for your team, it helps clarify for your volunteers. And a lot of times that is that thing that makes you unique and different than the neighboring nonprofit down the street.
You can't be everything to everybody. In another organization I got involved in kind of growing and not necessarily founding was the Foundation for Prader-Willi Research, and we started getting going in 2005, and it was very clear. We are doing research. We are funding research. We are not doing anything else. And so everything was kind of measured against that. Here's an opportunity. Does it match what we do? So to your point about this mission statement, I think it's really powerful. You say, this is what we do. It's also what we won't do or we don't do.
Yes.
Because a lot of times when we work with some of our own clients, and I go to their events and listen to them talk, they want to be everything
to everyone.
I want to do everything that's going to help this disorder. I want to do everything to cure, the issue with clean water in Africa. Well, how about you just cure clean water in like Rwanda? Start there. And then when they dial that down, then I think not only can they get their arms around it, but I think their donors can too.
I think the more specific and targeted it can be, your mission can be, the clearer it is for people who are potentially going to write a check, and they really, that clarity brings confidence in you and your organization for them.
Yeah, and it makes it like, okay, I actually think Matt can pull this off. I'm going to give him some money.
Yes. Yeah, because the idea of creating clean water in Africa, wow, that seems pretty daunting.
Right.
But creating clean water in one particular village, like, we can do that together, right?
Right.
So
I love it. So you help them with the mission.
Yeah.
And they're starting to kind of get an idea of who they are, what they do. What's next? Is it fundraising or is it something else?
The fundraising is always the key component at the beginning. I always tell people that at the beginning of your nonprofit journey, even though you want to be out doing the work, really about 80% of what you're doing in the beginning should be focused on developing a foundational donor base, basically. So the fundraising is really component, and then a really key component, and then helping leaders understand the components of asking people for money, sort of the psychological process that a potential giver goes through before they would agree to or even consider writing a check or coming on board monthly or whatever. Helping them to really identify with clarity what the problem they're solving is.
Yep.
How the work that their nonprofit is doing is going to solve that particular problem. Then what it's going to take financially as specifically as possible. That's the third step. It's the ask. Then the fourth step is, for me, is always the urgency. Why is it important for me to consider making a gift now rather than at some point in the future?
Right.
And then the last is just the kind of, with confidence, the call to action, whether that's a give now button on your email, or that's would you consider $100 a month right now to help, fund this project, or, we need $10,000 and, whatever that specific call to action is. But it's those 5 steps really, the problem, solution, ask, urgency, and action, that ultimately what I want to teach coaching clients is how to get the language around each one of those down right so that it begins to influence all of their communication. When they're sitting in front of somebody who's a potential supporter, or they're writing an email to somebody, or they're designing what their pitch is going to be at their next event, because we've all been to many, many events where you've gathered this great group of people together who are all passionate about what you do and who all have great financial means. And then when it comes to the opportunity of asking, presenting the need and asking, I've walked away from more of those confused about what the goal of it was rather than clear about what the goal of it was.
Right. And I'm going to pick on auctioneers a little bit. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to pick on auctioneers. I'm going to pick on the charities that use them, because, like, to your point, a lot of that's got to come from the heart, right?
Yes.
I mean, these are organizations that needs to get communicated if they're at a live event on stage with their guests. So I'm going to ask Inga a question here. So if that's the case, and I'm going to get up there and I'm going to talk about my charity, and I'm going to walk through the problem and the solution and really kind of get into what the ask is and the urgency and the call to action, why am I having my auctioneer do it?
There's a really fine balance between the emotional storytelling. We auctioneers consider ourselves storytellers.
Yeah.
But a mission statement, a mission moment should absolutely be presented either via video or a speaker that is part of the organization.
Okay.
And that just sets me up as an auctioneer into the
ask part.
The ask part.
Okay.
So there's emotional part of the ask. And like you said, the message has to be clear, couldn't be muddled, right? It needs to be clear. So there's a fine balance between that emotional message, we pulling on their heartstrings, and the clear ask. And once that is done and it's done properly, you already did the job for me. All I do is just use my
persuasion skills
and a little bit of, a little bit of a encouragement for
you're doing the awkward stuff.
Leverage the peer pressure in the room.
A little bit of peer pressure, a little bit of technique to really complete the process of them raising that paddle, raising their hand, and committing to that $10,000 donation.
Driving the energy. So, okay.
Driving energy.
So good compromise, right?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
I kind of set you up because I wanted your opinion on this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think that you want the emotion and the passion of the video or of the the executive director or the founder talking about why this is important and what they intend to do with it, and then you bring in the closer,
the guns,
right?
Exactly, and it works.
Okay, so let's build on this. So, have you been asked to get up on stage after a really poor introduction and having to close something where you felt like, I'm not sure these people know what
they're about to commit to?
Yes. Yeah. And you pivot and then you do the job for them.
Yeah.
You become that emotional storyteller on their behalf.
All right.
And it's not ideal, but we've been there, we've done it, and you do your best to still connect and engage the room on behalf of the organization, the cause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, so we're talking about fundraising, right? And I agree with you. Like, before you walk into that room or you're doing your online fundraiser,
right.
Good to know what you're asking for and why. Are you typically helping organizations with their first event, or have they been running them before and you're helping them improve them, or both?
So I think it's a little bit of both. I think I've worked with a couple of organizations specifically on events. Obviously that, and you guys know this better than I do, you're the pros in this area. Like, it's a fantastic tool for number one, sharing the mission and the message with people in a really winsome and an effective, powerful way. And at the same time, it's a great opportunity to raise awareness and income revenue for the organization. So events are something that I've been a part of and helped people put together. It's not exclusive by any means. I mean, we kind of look at the sum total of fundraising and all the different opportunities and options that a nonprofit has at their disposal to be able to generate support. So, yeah.
But like for a nonprofit that's just starting, I guess I'm mostly curious. Like, I mean, how do you raise money if you don't at least hold one event? Like, I mean,
direct outreach.
Yeah,
to the donors.
Yeah,
who are your donors?
Your family and friends, and then you go from there.
But okay, so let's let's go down this path, because I would say, when we started, we started with our family and friends. But the problem is like, I can email my family and friends, but I want them to engage their families and friends. Right. How do you do that without either like an online peer-to-peer type of program or an event? I'm playing devil's advocate. How else do you do it? Because if I email all my family and friends, they're going to give me money,
and then that's
it.
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you go beyond that if it's not a peer-to-peer fundraiser or an event? I'm curious.
Inga, you want to go first, or you want me to?
Well, she works. She runs events for a a living. I already know what her answer is going to be.
Exactly. We want to hear your opinion.
So that is the age-old question for everybody who is, hey, I've exhausted all the people I know. What about the people I don't know? Right.
Yeah.
And clearly, an event is a really great opportunity to introduce people. I want to be careful about just saying events. In some people's mind, they think of, we're having a 150 people or 200 people dinner, or a golf tournament or something, that, which are great. But an event can also be all the people who are your family and friends, inviting all their people over, all their family and friends over to their house.
Could be a micro event.
Yeah. And having an opportunity to sit and tell those people about that. Like another I'm a big fan of content marketing. So if there's any opportunity for you to create something that generates some interest or buzz and gets people moving towards your website, that you now have the opportunity to start to connect with the opportunity to jumpstart things and really get a bunch of people all in the pool at the same time. Definitely, events lend themselves to that, and that's great. I just have seen a lot of people do it in a lot of different ways as well.
Yeah.
I have a question.
A lot of people that are just bad at it too.
That's right.
Yeah.
I have a question. Speaking of someone's just starting, right?
Yeah.
Like, they are a brand new one-man show. Do they need a board? And who should be on their board? And what should the board do?
Well, the state is going to require you on board.
Yes. Like,
but
legally, do you have to have
But who should be on your board? Your drunk uncle?
That's That's a whole nother podcast.
Yes.
Here we go.
Yeah. Do we have time for that?
I want to hear Matt's opinion. Who should be on your board and how should they engage with your donors?
Well, so I think some general sort of big ideas and things to shoot for on the board would be people who come with a skill set that's different than yours.
Yes.
And also from a business sector that's different or nonprofit sector that's different from yours.
Yeah.
And I am a fan of the board members being either being connectors or able to be a significant financial supporter at the same time.
Yep.
So what I really think is super important is the diversity of experiences that board members bring, just because they've walked through stuff that is going to apply at some point or another in your nonprofit's journey. I don't love family members being a part of the board. I've just seen that go sideways more times than I can count. But that's oftentimes is a lot of where people land
because their board works, right? I mean, I think what you said is spot on, especially for organizations that evolve too. Because a lot of charities start out with a board that's just all the people doing the work.
Yes.
Right.
It's like, oh, we're going to invite Inga on our board because she did such a great job of organizing all the decorations and the layout at our event. Okay, well, you know what? She's a great volunteer. I don't know if she'd make a great board member. I'm not picking on you, Inga.
I know.
Right?
It's okay.
But it's like, I mean, you run into that with in a lot of the organizations I've been on. It's like, okay, what do we need on our board? We probably need someone who's a lawyer or has some sort of legal background. It'd be nice to have someone who has a finance background. How about a technology background? I mean, to your point, you start to try to find those people, and they either contribute or in either a financial way or in a resource.
Right. Or both, right?
Or both.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100% agree.
I think it's just kind of financially prudent and just a lot of strategic and leadership wisdom to have people who can tell you the truth about the situations that you're facing, and also who can leverage their own networks and their own communities to be able to affect big change when you need it.
Right.
And oftentimes the people who are the most passionate about sort of being there every time the doors are open, figuratively speaking, and helping and volunteering, and are great resources and a really valuable part of your team, but maybe not board members.
Exactly right. And I would say I want board members on my organization that have a growth mindset if my intention is to grow.
Yep.
Which means that they're willing to watch us take risks and try things as we start to evolve our organization. Because we see this a lot, right? I mean, we're a software company selling software to charities, and a lot of it is, our board doesn't want us to make that investment. Well, what does your board want you to do?
Yeah.
Right. We see this all the time.
Just look at the bottom line. Are there areas that we can be investing in our organization that are going to generate a return?
Right.
Right.
I would lean on my board to be the people doing that, because to your point, a lot of these founders are people that want to save the whales or generate clean water in Africa. They're not MBAs. In a lot of cases. Right.
And I mean, I think it's a smart leadership principle just in general to position people around you who are going to recognize blind spots and who are going to be able to see things and bring skill sets that you don't see or you don't have. And we have a tendency just naturally as humans to surround ourselves with people who are like us. And so the idea of putting a board together with people who are sort of outside the orbit of who we are and what we do seems uncomfortable at best, but is, I think, foundationally just imperative.
Yeah, 100% agree. All right, should we talk about events a little bit more?
We should.
I know you wanted to talk about board members. We have a podcast. We have a plug, Mark, to one of our old podcasts, Board Members, Friend or Foe. We should find that one.
Oh, I love it. It's so good.
Click on the link.
That's right. Click on the link in the top right corner.
Right.
Board Members, Friend or Foe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've seen them both. And
resistant to change board members.
I know. And I've been on a lot of boards, and it's and I've seen all of it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to admit that I was always the best board member, but you learn over time. The goal is to support the organization and also the executive director and the staff, and sometimes you have to do that by pushing them a little bit, versus just telling them what they want to hear.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, events. So obviously we're in the event technology space. And so how have you seen events evolve over the years, and kind of when you're working with an organization that's looking to either start an event or maybe evolve it into something better? Are you recommending that they look at technology, or are you what do you typically do when you walk in and check out a nonprofit's event?
I look a lot at just how are we clearly communicating the message, and how user, and I say this this is kind of a buzzy phrase that a lot of people say, and I think it means a lot of different things, but how user friendly is this? And that could apply to technology, but it could also just mean how easy is the whole process to register for the event? How easy is it to pay for the ticket for it? How easy is it to get the know before you go kind of things? Like what's the overall sort of user experience? And to the extent that technology can help, guide that and clean it up and make it just as easy and as seamless as possible for the person who's attending, is better.
Yeah, guest experience, right? And we talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the best possible guest experience. And it doesn't mean that I have to use one certain technology over another, but as everything kind of connects together with the venue, the layout, the run of show, the technology, it needs to flow well, I think is what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely.
Right.
And we oftentimes, what I see a lot of times is I talk a lot about camera angles, and what I mean by that is if you think about most iconic scene in a movie is when the director is sort of planning that and plotting that out, it's all about where they place the cameras. You can affect the emotion, you can affect the sort of the overall impact of the scene based on where the camera is. And we oftentimes in the planning and in the sort of the information gathering and all of the details that go into creating an event, we will oftentimes place the camera pointing back at ourselves and make decisions based on, is this easiest for us, and is this the most efficient use of our time or our energy or our efforts or whatever, which I don't want to discount that at all, but sometimes if we're making those decisions at the expense of the user experience because it's easier for us, we're setting ourselves up for just a less than awesome night or golf tournament.
But I'm glad you're helping them through that, because I would say 9 times out of 10 that tends to be the decision criteria for a lot of organizations.
It's the natural drift of things. We're all sort of in self-preservation mode all the time, and if this is going to help us do something behind the scenes better, we're going to naturally drift in that direction. And oftentimes you'll see processes or systems that are in place that work well for the accounting department, but are horrible for the user of it, So
it's one of those things where you have to kind of lay out like a value equation of all the decisions I'm making. And this is not just technology. I'd say venue, everything, right?
Yeah.
And it's the likelihood of success, right? That's the numerator of my value equation, right? What's the probability of the amount of money I might make? Okay. And it's got to be divided by the cost and the effort it's going to take to pull it off.
Right.
Okay. And I think what everybody thinks not everybody, but I think a lot of people we chat with think is the likeliness and how much I'm going to make is the same no matter where I do my event, what technology I use. They're ignoring that part.
Right.
And they're just looking at how much effort is it and how much does it cost. Mm-hmm. And so what I hear you saying, which I think is super powerful, is no, the top does matter. Because if I make a decision of what I want, like how much I'm, like what I'm going to spend on a piece of technology or where I'm going to do my event.
Yeah.
Okay. Or I'm looking for a particular feature because it makes my life easier.
Yep.
Okay. At the expense of the guest experience. And we all know guest experience correlates with revenue.
Right.
Is it worth it? Like, I don't think it is worth it.
Right.
I think you have to look at that and say not everything is created the same.
Yep.
You know, and we have a really good friend, and she works with us in the event space, and she's she does a lot of staffing. And I was like, you know, how's it going? She's like, I see more and more nonprofits moving to these low-end free software platforms, and we're going through hoops and struggling to try to make them work, and they're just creating a horrible guest experience.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they're not looking at it saying, okay, well, some of these platforms like a Handbid, they might cost a little bit more, but they're going to generate a way better guest experience. No one's looking at the top of that. And so I think when you say that that's important, I guess my next question is how do you get your clients to see that?
Wow, great question. I think at some level, I hope that if they've invested the time and the energy and the money in order to bring a coach on who has expertise and experience, that I'm going to keep in front of them just reminding them of, hey, where are you putting the camera? Like you know, don't neglect the user experience, the guest, to use your language, the guest experience. And sadly, I mean, there have been some occasions where, and I'm sure you guys have walked through this as well, where you've coached and you said, hey, this is you need to be thinking about this, and they'll march forward anyway. And then, you know, quietly afterward, you say to yourself, I told him.
Well, after we get blamed.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
After it's all our fault anyway. But anyway, it's fine.
But at the end of the day, like our commitment my commitment to the clients and you guys as well, I'm sure, is we're going to offer up our best practices. We're going to offer up our best wisdom and counsel. And here's all the reasons I think that it's not going to work or not going to work the way you think it is. The other thing I oftentimes will do is, if I've had other experiences with other organizations who have kind of tried to cross the same bridge, go, hey, listen, don't listen to me. Let me put you onto this other person who's sat in your seat and walked through this experience and said, don't. Even though you've hired me to be the coach, don't pay attention to me. Ask this other person about that, you know. Yeah. And sometimes it works, sometimes not so.
That's an interesting strategy. Yeah. I think that could be, that could work. You know, it's because in the beginning when we were first getting started, we had done obviously events for a long time.
Yeah,
and then early on, we're like, well, that doesn't sound like a really good way to do it. But hey, you're the customer. The customer's always right. Let's go ahead and just do it their way, and then it's a total mess. And then you're like, okay, I should not have agreed to that. And we did that a few times. And then finally we're like, you know what? The customer isn't always right. The customer can do what they want at the end of the day.
Right.
But we're going to tell them they're not right, so that they understand. And we explain why. I mean, it's not one of these, it's just because, it's not
you don't like it,
the parents that say, don't touch that because I told you to.
Right.
It's the don't touch the hot stove because if you do, you're going to burn your hand. It's going to hurt.
Right.
So we try to explain to them what the ramifications are.
Yeah.
Right.
But as a coach, you probably go through the same thing. It's like, I've seen this before. I've seen this movie. Do you use your? I've seen this movie.
I've seen this movie. I know how this ends.
I know how this ends.
I've seen this movie about 40 times.
That's right.
I know how this ends every time.
In The Karate Kid, the villain's going to get kicked in the face at the end. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Right.
So, it's one of those things where, I think now we feel really comfortable, as an organization that's not just providing technology, we are providing consulting and expertise.
Yeah.
We're not doing the gamut of, the 6 areas.
Right.
But when it comes to your particular event, our job is to tell you that the numerator matters the most, right? That guest experience matters.
I think foundationally at the beginning, and I always try to counsel people this way of like you're making a time investment, you're making a financial investment, you're making a priority decision in us working together. At the end of the day, you get to choose what you glean from this, take from this, put into practice, and what you don't. But don't just throw the money away just by asking for opinions about things and getting wisdom and counsel and coaching, and then ignore it.
Oh, we do that all the time.
We do.
If I hire a nutritionist, I know exactly what they're going to tell me.
Right.
But will you
Stop
listen?
eating the Big Mac.
But will you listen?
But when it's midnight and you've been at the Grizzly Rose all night and Taco Bell's the only thing open,
There you go.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
What do you do? Right?
That is a true story,
You
by the way.
get the Doritos Locos Taco.
Right.
Well, I think there's two camps too when it comes to technology and better solutions and expertise. We have clients that come to us because they did have a really bad guest experience a year before with their event. And their biggest donors complain and like, okay, well, we need a better solution. They're ready to make that change. Wonderful. We're here to help. There's also the camp of people that they do not know what they do not know. So as long as they're willing to listen, we're able to provide expertise and solution, or they don't listen.
We did a client once, and we're not here to pick on particular customers, but I actually went to this event, and I walk in the door, and there's an auctioneer that we know well, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad to see you guys." I'm like, let's catch up. Haven't seen you in a while. They're down in Florida. I'm like, so anyway, he goes, "I just want to tell you, you're the 6th mobile bidding company they will have had in 6 years.
Oh.
I hope they stick with you."
It's a red flag.
And I was like, they're not, because they didn't listen to anything we told them.
Exactly.
And I already can tell you it's going to be a mess tonight. I said, and we should not be doing this event, but it's too short on time.
Yeah.
But, it's one of those things where I'm like, they're not going to listen to us, and they're going to go to the 7th, and then they're going to go to the 8th.
Yeah.
Right.
And guess where all their donor data is? It's in 7 different platforms.
Right.
And there's always someone else to blame.
Yeah, it's just, it's one of those things where I think, as a consultant and a coach, it's tough, right? You want your customers to listen. If you're the nutritionist, you want them to make good food choices. If you're the personal trainer at the gym, you want them to actually do what you tell them to.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and particularly as it relates to technology, because I know we got into this to begin with, like with that question is, unless you're in technology full time, this is such a quickly changing business sector, and what is new and working awesomely today is potentially, changing or evolving or obsolete or whatever, use whatever adjective you want, not that far down the road. And it's, you guys can't say this, I can say this, it's ludicrous to think that somebody who's a leader in a nonprofit organization who is doing all the things that, all the 6 other things that we've been talking about, has the time or the understanding to be able to focus on
100%
the technology. So why would I not lean into the people I'm bringing on board to kind of walk me through this? And I know you're like, hey, but guys and girls do this all the time. They bring us on and they don't listen to what
they do. Opposite. They actually do opposite.
What we're describing, and I go to any of our listeners or viewers should know this. It's technology and. It's technology and expertise. You can find technology, right? I mean, you can print out paper bid sheets, using Microsoft Word, but don't call Microsoft and ask them for help. Like,
right.
And we have a lot of these software platforms out there. They will run your auction, or there'll be a ticketing system for you, but call them the night of your event and say, how do I do this? They're not going to answer the phone.
Yeah.
Or if you call them up a week in advance and say, how should I properly structure a check-in so that I have a great guest experience? They're not going to give you any advice because those people have never been to an event.
Yeah.
And so I think, for us, what we try to say is yes, you shouldn't worry about where technology is going. You should let your partner do that, but you should let them worry about it where it's going in the context of what you're trying to do as a charity, which is raise more money and create a great guest experience.
Yeah.
We know that those things are important. It's not about saving you money. It's about raising you money.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people look at it and say, oh, this mobile bidding technology costs this amount of money. I can save $100 and go to that one. So I've lowered the denominator by $100. That's great. But what have I done to my numerator?
Right. Who knows, right?
Who knows?
And unfortunately, you find out after the fact a lot of times, right?
Yes, with your disgruntled board members.
Yeah.
We're really good at giving you their opinion on how all the decisions that you're making.
Right. Free is never free.
No, I hear you. So anyway, this has been amazing. I mean, I tell you, like a good conversation. I'm glad I'm glad there's people like you in the world helping these charities, advance their cause and obviously be better at what they're doing.
And my heart really is for the startups and the small organizations. More so, I mean, I'd love to work with any size group, but really, in particular, it's for the people who literally have that. And I've watched some very close personal friends firsthand sort of walk through this. I got a 501c3. I'm passionate about this thing, and they sit at their desk and go, I don't. What am I supposed to do next?
Right.
And it's that close. You're that close to it.
Yep.
And you just need somebody to sort of go, okay, this is not as bad as you think it is. It's not as hard as you think it is. It's achievable. It's attainable. But you're going to have to put your nose to the grindstone and do some work. But I can come alongside and kind of just, clear the path for you a little bit.
Okay. Well, for people that want to get a hold of you so that you can help them do that, how do they reach you?
So easiest way, website is nonprofitlaunchplan.com, all one word, nonprofitlaunchplan.com. My email is Matt, M-A-T-T, at nonprofitlaunchplan.com.
I love it. Okay.
Pretty simple.
We like simple.
I know.
Simple's
That's
good.
my if I could boil it all down to one message, try to keep it pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, why not? All right, 6 steps, nonprofit launch plan. Thank you so much, Matt, for being a guest on the show.
Appreciate you guys.
We're going to wrap up this episode of Elevate Your Event. Until next time, happy fundraising.
If you enjoyed our show, please take a moment to leave us a review. You can find us on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Don't forget to subscribe for more great content. And if you're a fan of video, check us out on YouTube. Until next time, happy fundraising.